Today's tutorial covers how to paint a watercolor eye. I'm using my own as a reference. So you will need a photocopy of your eye, some watercolor paper A4, some masking fluid, 2 brushes, liner 00, one for masking fluid, one for your painting, your painting color of choice, here it is charcoal grey, a pencil and eraser to draw, and hopefully you will come out with a watercolor eye. To begin with, I apply the masking fluid onto the paper. I use the liner brush to highlight the areas within my photo where I want them to stay and remain white. I use the fine liner by dipping it straight into the bottle and then coming in, and where I've marked my markings for the highlights, I come in with the masking fluid. So within the pupil, a little bit above the eyelid, the lower area, and I just come in where the reflection is. And these areas will remain white. This masking fluid is quite a good one. I don't mind it. It applies really well, and the bonus is that it cleans off your brush quite easily. I'm putting a few highlights there in the eyebrow as well, and basically I'm plopping it into some water, giving it a shake, rubbing off the excess water, and my brush is good as new. Now the watercolor that I'm using here is charcoal grey. It's a Windsor and Newton. You can use any one you'd like. I place the watercolor in my palette and water it down, and I come in, we're going to work on the eyeball section itself. It's not white, so we're coming in with a wash of a very light grey. Now you'll find that the eyeball itself, you have to tinge it a little bit. I'm going to start working in the corner there with the darker grey, and then just softening each stroke, and then coming in a little bit richer with my line. This is my wrinkle line, and again applying some water and just washing that out. So as I'm doing this, the area that I did work on is already drying slowly for me, and I'm working my way around that area. And I'm looking at my photo and I can see that there are darker points within that photo. So that is what I'm doing here with the colour, dispersing the shading. Watering it down, dabbing it out, not coming in too heavy straight away is the secret. Now that's slightly dry. I'm coming in now with the colour in its purest form, not watered down a lot. And around that iris area is quite dark, and you'll have a shadow underneath your eyelid. Now I'm just marking that out, and then bringing in some water and allowing that water to disperse a little bit, and then coming into the actual pupil. Now the pupil has a little bit of reflection, so nice and strong with the inner, and then just drawing out that colour slightly. I'm dabbing it out and then coming in again. It's moistening my paper by doing it this way, but it's also giving me a guideline of where I want the water to go. And as you can see, it's coming and dispersing quite nicely. I want that ring of darkness, and then I want to disperse it with some water and come in where my pupil is quite dark in the middle. And then the underside is the area that has the shadows. And again, I'm coming with another layer of the charcoal grey and dispersing it with water and allowing the watercolour to move outwards and provide me with the shading that I need. And again, coming into the pupil, darkening that slightly. Now my next step is to bring in some more shading. Now the paper is slightly wet, which is fantastic. And what we want to do here is we want to let the watercolor disperse into the water itself and move it around. So when we're placing the watercolor in, we can now disperse it into the water. And I'm using the darker area that was already in the pupil and pushing that into the water, and as you can see, it's dispersing, and that's what you want it to do. You want to keep the eyeball itself the iris itself quite watery, so when you are placing the colour in, it's dispersing naturally and giving you highlights and darker bits. And again, coming in with the purest form of the colour and dropping in the areas. The outer area of the iris will be darker, and then you'll have the area from the pupil coming out, which will be slightly darker too. So it's bleeding through at the moment into the water that's there, and it's giving it quite a natural iris look. Now down the bottom, I want to come in a little bit darker. My photo reference indicates to me that this area is dark and it's quite a crisp black line. And up the top under the eyelid. Now I'm just dropping in the water, into the water, the watercolor, and letting it disperse and bringing it out naturally. The paper towel I'm using to mop up any bits that I'm not happy with. So at the moment, this is what we've got. And as you can see, that bit that I worked in very first, the eyeball bit, you can't really tell that that is dark at all, but it's just enough not to be pure white, which will allow your pupil to pop. Now I'm just working in the corners. Now the corner here of my eye in my photo is quite dark. So I'm coming in slowly and gradually building it up and bringing in the water. I'm not coming in dark straight away. And I've got a slight highlight around the eye there. And again, bringing in the shadows. Everything here is in stages, and you're assessing where it's darker and lighter. And that's something that you need to learn to do yourself. You need to look at the photo and work out where your dark points are and your lighter points, and come in with the paint accordingly. Now I'm doing it in several layers here. That way I'm not overloading my brush with too much paint. Now there's some shadings on that upper eyelid that I'm coming in with, and there's a fair bit of water on that page because I do want the watercolor to move. And now underneath the eye itself, there's a little bit where your eyelashes will come out, and that will remain quite light. And again, coming up onto that top section and working in a little bit darker. And I'm just using the rigger to draw out the colour that's already there. The slightest amount of colour in that section. And there's this little triangular bit that is quite dark in the corner of the eye, and bring in that shading. You're touching the paper ever so lightly at this stage. Not too much water with the finer details. And you're using the point of the rigger. Even though it's on its side, you're still using the point. And I'm just bringing in the shading and working my way around the bottom of that eye, keeping that eye area quite light where the eyelashes will come out. And again, now I'm intensifying that shaded area. I've marked out on my paper where I do want the shading, and then I'm reassessing. So I want to come in and now work on that top eyelid and the nose shadow that it creates just underneath the eyebrow and the inner eye area. And then coming in with the finer line around the iris again, deepening that every stage that I go into there. Again, that side of the eye is quite dark with the shading, so I'm bringing in more of the paint. I'm not as zoomed in at this stage so that you can see the eye overall as I'm seeing it, so that I can assess where I want to put more colour. I'm bringing in that rich colour now, and I'm dragging through the lighter shading with some water. So I'm moving my hand up and over the eye, and then taking the rigger brush and dispersing the water. So I'm hooking my hand around that eyelid and then dabbing out some areas. As you can see, the shading is coming along, and it's coming across that little crest bit. And again, coming back into the iris area and darkening that area. And you'll have that little lip, that little line where the eyelashes will come from, and you want that to remain a little lighter. And again, working into the darker points and some of the wrinkled areas. And so as you can see, there's some darker areas within that photo, which I'm going to come in. And it's all about just bringing in a little bit of watercolor at a time and dispersing it. Bits that you don't like, use your paper towel. And look at your photo and look at the places where it's darker, come in with more colour. Where it's lighter, use a light hand. Don't put too much watercolour into that. As you can see, underneath that eyeball, I'm leaving it white. I'm going to come in with my rigger now, lots of paint. Don't be afraid as long as it's watered down. And then paper towel. So I've stained the paper. And then I'm just coming in with my wrinkles nice and light. And again, layering the areas that I want dark. So as they dry, come back in. Again, coming in with more of that colour and just working underneath the brow bit. And so it's looking like this at this stage. The actual eyelid will need some work, so I'll come in and do that shortly. And again, working on that darker shadowing on the outer eye. It's all about waiting a little bit and then coming in with your stronger colours. Now I'm working on the eyelashes. I don't have very many, so it makes it a little bit harder. Now the directions are from the inner nose, your eyelashes will curve towards your nose, the little fine ones, and then your outer ones from your eyeball, your iris outwards will curve out towards your ears. And then I've got quite fine ones down the bottom. And again, I'm working them crisscross. They're not perfect and the lines are very fine, using a loaded liner brush that's only been slightly watered down. And you're using a flicking motion, which you're probably only using a couple of strands of hair from that brush. And you're coming in and assessing where your eyelashes are. And again, where you need to come in a little bit darker with your shading. As you can see, if I don't like it, I come in with some paper towel. And I want that iris to pop out, so I'm putting a little bit more shading in. Now the eyebrow itself, wisping in some lines, the direction that they're going. Sporadically here and there where I want those lines, because I will come in with a wash to wash them out slightly. As you can see, I've come in with some water and it's made some of the lines visible and others not, and I'm letting that dry a little bit and then coming back in with the shading. Lots of layers on this one. And then coming in again with some lines, which are going to disperse because it's quite wet up there. Again, you want that intensity. Have a look at your photo, look where your darkest lines are, and come in with layers. Don't go in dark straight off. Come in and assess where you want those darkest points and layer it until you're happy with the colour. Again, I'm coming into the photo, looking into the pupil, and now this area here, I'm actually going to drag out the pupil so it's not as dark as the rest of the pupil. And now that's dried a little bit, so I'm wisping through some more eyebrow, hair. And constantly reassessing my painting. This is your painting, this is your eye. So you'll have to work out where your highlights are and where you want to go a little bit deeper. Constantly coming in and relayering. Again, darker in that area. So I'm coming in with more colour. I'm only using the charcoal grey. I haven't used any other colour, but because I'm using layers, it's allowing me to intensify that colour without having to use any other colour. When you come in soft, it allows you then to build up your layers and build up your colour and build up the intensity that you need for this type of painting. If I come in straight away with a really deep, rich colour, my values are gone straight away. And so start light and work your layers and your shading. And even though that area is white, I'm just coming in with a little bit of shading. Now the rigger on its side like that has allowed me to put in a few wrinkles. And I'm using the rigger with a little bit of paint on it and then using it on its side where it is now almost like a dry brush. And by using it on its side, it's allowing me to touch the paper a little bit in areas and then not touch the paper, allowing for highlights that are naturally created with the brush itself. And then coming in with some darker eyebrows and lashes. And it's all in stages as your painting dries. And you've got the darker areas coming in again. I'm just reassessing to where I want it darker. And you're pretty much coming close to the end of your eye now. Just the finishing touch. And there you have it.